The first time I saw the words splashed across the side of my barn, my stomach dropped. Big white spray paint letters. Code violation, screaming at me from a wall I had built with my own 2 hands. My security camera caught it all, and the figure holding the spray can wasn't some random vandal. It was the HOA president herself. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a barn, it was a war over control, and I was the target. I live on the edge of Ridgeview Estates, right where the neat subdivision tapers off into open land. My place was grandfathered in years before the HOA existed, which meant their rules weren't supposed to touch me. I knew that when I built my barn, red siding, reclaimed wood solar panels on the roof, everything inspected and signed off by the county. It was solid, it was legal, and it was mine. But Dr. Ellingsworth, the so-called president of Ridgeview HOA, never saw it that way. She showed up on my porch at 7 in the morning, clipboard clutched like a weapon. Eyes narrowed at me like I was a cockroach she'd found in her kitchen. "Mr. Trubel," she said, "we need to talk about your barn." I hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee. I told her it was all county-approved, nothing illegal about it. She flipped her clipboard, sniffed, and said, "It doesn't meet our standards. It's unsightly." Unsightly. My barn could have been on the cover of a homesteading magazine, and she called it an eyesore. I reminded her, probably too bluntly, that my land wasn't under her jurisdiction. She fired back that I'd signed the covenant when I bought the place. I told her flat out I hadn't, and she knew it. My deed never listed the HOA. Draw didn't like being told no. I watched her eyes sharpen, and I should have known right then this wouldn't be the end. The next morning, I walked outside to find a bright orange violation notice taped to my barn door. Looked official enough at a glance, HOA letterhead threats of fines if I didn't demolish the structure in 10 days. But the wording was sloppy, vague references to architectural compliance, nothing specific. I called the county inspector who'd signed off on my barn. Jerry chuckled, flipped through his folder, and said, "She's full of it. That barn's 100% legal. She doesn't have any authority over your property." He even notarized a letter for me. I taped copies of it right onto the barn, one on every wall. Thought that would end it. That's when Draw took it further. The spray paint. My barn defaced like it was some teenage prank. Only it wasn't. It was the woman who strutted around this neighborhood as if she were queen. I took the footage straight to the sheriff's office. They filed a report, told me vandalism was chargeable. I walked out thinking justice might actually work. But Draw wasn't finished. 2 days later, a manila envelope slid under my front door. No postage, no return address, just a letterhead stamped with the HOA logo, a cease and desist. It accused me of harassing a board member by reporting her vandalism to the police. They threatened civil litigation for reputational damages. I sat there at my kitchen counter reading every line twice, and for the first time I felt a pit in my stomach. What if they could drag me into court? What if I ended up paying thousands just to defend myself? I'm not proud to admit it, but that night I almost gave up. I stared at that barn through the window and thought maybe I should just tear it down. Maybe it wasn't worth the stress, the threats, the endless fight. Maybe Draw was right, and I was just being stubborn. That thought haunted me because it meant she'd won, not by being right, but by making me doubt myself. The next morning, I called my cousin Colleen. She's a real estate lawyer down in Charleston. I emailed her the so-called legal letter. She skimmed it, snorted, and said, "This isn't from an attorney. No bar number, no law firm." She probably downloaded a template online. That flicker of hope came back. Colleen dug deeper and found something worse. Dr. Draw and the HOA had filed a petition to expand their jurisdiction retroactively, include my street in their map. And get this, my signature was on it. I pulled my mortgage documents out of a drawer and compared. My signature was blocky, sharp letters. The one on the petition was smooth, cursive, delicate loops. Not mine. Not even close. I started knocking on doors. Old Navy vet Mr. Kim, Mrs. Langston from the animal shelter. The young couple Marcus and Tasha, all of them showed me the same thing. Their names on that petition forged. Fraud, plain and simple. We signed statements, got them notarized, submitted them to the Planning Commission. I even contacted the local news. When the story aired, homeowners accuse HOA of forgery and harassment. Everything exploded. Neighbors who'd kept quiet for years suddenly found their voices. Turns out, I wasn't the only one Dr. Ah had tried to bully. Still, she doubled down. Sent HOA volunteers onto my lawn with laminated badges snapping photos of my barn. I told them straight, "You're trespassing." Pulled out my phone, filmed them just like they were filming me. They backed off, but it was obvious Draw wasn't backing down until she got what she wanted. Then the subpoena came. Not for me, for her. Forgery, vandalism, filing false documents. Real charges. The sheriff's office had enough evidence to move. And once they raided the HOA office, the truth spilled out like a dam breaking. Storage units full of altered petitions, surveillance logs on residents, even hidden cameras disguised as birdhouses. 17 binders, one for each household color-coded. Mine had a red tab with notes about when I parked my truck when my porch light was on, even when I mowed the lawn. Reading it made my skin crawl. The county detective laid it out for me in her office. She planned this for months, she said, flipping through files. Targeted edge properties like yours to expand HOA control, inflate dues. Forged signatures created shell companies, laundered funds. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was a con. I sat there shaking my head, realizing my barn had just been the excuse she needed to push her scheme. By then, the community had had enough. A special meeting was called in the gymnasium. Rows of folding chairs, neighbors buzzing like they hadn't in years. The detective stepped up to the stage, clicked through slides, photos of fake petitions, shots from hidden cameras, copies of Draw's phony cease and desist. Gasps rippled through the room. People shouted, cursed under their breath. I could feel the anger sharp and heavy pressing against my ribs. Then someone called my name. Would I speak? My throat tightened. I hadn't planned on it, but I found myself standing anyway. I didn't set out to fight anyone I told them. I just wanted a barn. Something useful, something I could be proud of. But this wasn't about code violations. It was about control. And we all let it happen because we stayed silent. That ends tonight. My voice cracked, but the words landed. The room erupted in steady applause, not wild cheering, but a tide turning. Right there in that gym, the council voted to dissolve Ridgeview HOA entirely. 2/3 was all it took, and we had over 80%. The bylaws Draw had wielded like a sword became the knife that cut her down. Minutes later, deputies led her out the side door in handcuffs. No one defended her. Not a single voice rose to protest. She scanned the crowd, eyes darting for allies but found none. I stood in the back, watching it all unfold. The woman who spray-painted my barn, who forged my name, who stalked my property with hidden cameras, her empire crumbled in one night. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just felt the weight lift, the tightness in my chest finally ease. Because, in the end, this was never about a barn. It was about what happens when power goes unchecked, when fear keeps people quiet. And it was about what happens the moment someone finally says no. Lesson: if you don't stand up to bullies, they don't just take your barn, they take everything.